I doubt everyone does.
Bienvenidos. Yay. If you can take a seat, we're about to get started, and we have to be as respectful as possible so that we can hear everyone's wonderful responses. Good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome to our at-large candidate forum focused on the educational issues that matter deeply to us at DC Bilingual and to the students and families across all of Washington, D.C. And thank you for, Maya, for providing us the ranked choice materials so that we can all be fully aware of how that's going to work this election. My name is Danielle Anello, and I am the CEO of DC Bilingual Public Charter School. I love this crowd. I never get that reaction. This is nice. I also serve as a board member for my school, DC, and the DC Special Education Cooperative. With DC Special Ed Cooperative, Julie, where are you? They are one of tonight's sponsors. I am also a proud parent of 2 children. Please raise your hands. Who attended DC Bilingual and now attend DCPS public schools. I'm a DC voter, and I'm a first-generation immigrant. Thank you. So, tonight's forum is made possible through a powerful collaboration of organizations, all committed to improving outcomes for students across our city, including the Center for Strong Public Schools, the National Charter Collaborative, the DC Special Education Cooperative, and PAVE. We are also grateful to our partners at Washington Latin, My Brother's Keeper, and the Education Forward DC, who will host a mayoral forum on Thursday. So make sure you attend that as well. This is my 17th year at DC Bilingual, and it is truly an honor to welcome all of you, those here in person and those who are joining virtually. We're encouraged by the strong turnout tonight. In addition to those you see here in the room, we have over 40 people joining us via live stream. This level of engagement reflects how deeply our community cares about the future of education in our city and about ensuring that students and families who are too often left out are now centered in this conversation tonight. The issues we will discuss tonight are not abstract. They are the daily realities in our schools. How we address racial inequities, how we serve multilingual learners, how we support students with disabilities, how we ensure our schools are safe and trusted spaces, and how we build systems that are truly equitable and accountable. At DC Bilingual, we see every day how city-level decisions shape what happens in classrooms and in the lives of our families. This is why this conversation matters. Tonight is an opportunity to hear directly from candidates, not just about their ideas, but about their commitments, how they will lead, how they will be held accountable, and how they will improve outcomes for all students, especially those who have been historically marginalized. We are looking forward to a thoughtful, honest, and solutions-oriented conversation. It is now my honor to introduce our moderator, Maria Cardona. Maria is a nationally recognized political strategist and commentator, founder of Latinovations, a proud DC Bilingual alum, parent, and a dear friend. We are incredibly grateful to have her guide us in this conversation. Please join me in welcoming Maria Cardona.
Thank you so much. Muchas gracias. Buenas noches. Good evening. Thank you so much for being here. The audience members, this is so important for everyone to understand exactly what our candidates are offering. Thank you so much, candidates. This is not an easy job that you all are doing, so I appreciate you all showing up, being prepared, and having this really important conversation with our DC voters. As Daniela said, I want to thank Daniela and DC Bilingual. As she said, I am a alum. My two children graduated graduated up until the 6th grade, right, from DC Bilingual. And so I'm really excited also to hear from these candidates because this is very close to home for us. And I'm very excited to hear the conversation. And I want to underscore something that Daniela said, which is we're going to be looking for clarity, specificity, precision in your answer. So as detailed as you can be, that is going to be really, really helpful. So we're going to start out with statements from each candidate, 2 minutes. You're going to get a 2-minute time frame to do an opening statement. After that, we're going to go through questions. The answers to each question, you will get 1 minute. And then if there needs to be a follow-up, the follow-up will be 15 to 30 seconds. But like I said, we're looking for as much precision as possible, and we won't need to have any follow-up from the questions. We're going to mix up the order of the questions. Since everyone is going to answer the same questions, we don't want to give too many people an advantage since you will be hearing the questions. So everyone will get a chance, maybe 4 people will get a chance to be the first ones answering it. So with that said, where's my timer? Thank you so much. Do you guys, is it working? Yay, the timer's working. Okay, fantastic. Okay, well then let's get started. Let's start with you, Lisa. Thank you so much.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Yes. Hi, everyone. Thank you for hosting, and thank you for everyone for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here. It's nice to see many people that I've had the opportunity to work with over the years in the education community as well. I'm Lisa Raymond. I'm running for DC Council at Large, and I've had 30 years of experience across the education landscape, working with 3 charter schools, including one as being chair of the Board of Trustees, most recently of Creative Minds International. I was an elected Ward 6 and president for the State Board of Education member, and I was also Chief Education Advisor to our previous council chairman, Kwame Brown. I'm also a parent of students who navigated DC schools. So I certainly have a lot of experience in that way as well. I think that we need council members who really understand something very critical, which is that too many students fall behind, and it's really difficult for them to catch up. We need a lot of focus on that. I saw this firsthand back when I was at Cesar Chavez as Chief Operating Officer, and I saw students showing up in 9th grade 2 to 3 years at least behind in reading. And that was something that I found shocking, that I felt that the system was broken and I wasn't willing to accept that. So that's what prompted me to run for the Board of Education and then later to take on the difficult job of managing education at the council. I think, again, we need more education champions at the council. We need council members who are very focused on oversight, who are focused on accountability and actual outcomes. And I think that all of you would agree that one important place to start is that it's not acceptable to have 13% of our students receiving special education services being considered prepared for college and careers. So that's where I would start. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Candace passing it down.
Yes. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Candace Tiana Nelson, and I'm running to be your next at-large council member because I believe people need to be seen, heard, and valued. And I know a lot of us don't feel that way right now. If you're hearing a twang roll out, I grew up in Winchester, Virginia. I'd just like to address that up front. The elementary school that I went to was called Apple Pie Ridge.
Oh, wow.
Sweet name, sour experience. I often felt left behind, left out, invisible, being the only black student in my class or sometimes in my entire grade. And so from that comes the passion to amplify the voices of people, and that is why I'm running. My government class was my favorite class, and now I'm sitting before you with 20 years of local government experience. So who knew that that was going to be the forecast? But I did know that it is the place where I wanted to build my career, and I want to bring my experience and my heart to this seat. I've worked at 5 different government agencies. I ran the Attorney General transition for Brian Schwab. I served as Chief of Staff to the Ward 4 Council Member Janice Lewis George. And in all of that, I know that our systems need to work. I also believe in 3 things that are foundational that I want to focus on as a council member, and that's education, healthcare, and housing, and ensuring that they are affordable, accessible, and of quality. And quality is key. So my heart beats for equity and execution. I'm ready to make sure that this government works for everyone, and I thank you for being here tonight.
Thanks, Candace.
Candace can, DC can, yes, we can. He wanted me to know that.
I love that. All right. Oh, I'm okay. Good evening, y'all. How you doing? Timer started. Got to roll. So I'm Greg Jackson. I am the son of a substitute teacher and a bus driver. I came from a public school system that was underfunded and counted out. And despite those odds, I went on to graduate from the University of Virginia and then Yale. And after that, came to DC, frankly, for opportunity, like so many others here. Worked in government and politics, but in April of 2013, my life changed forever. I was caught in the middle of a crossfire and shot and nearly killed in the Shaw community. And since then, in 2013, we've had over 5,000 residents that have been shot in this district, and 5 of them were my mentees. DeMarcos Pinckney being one of them, who was shot and killed over a YouTube video his freshman year of high school. And frankly, I've learned firsthand how this crisis of safety and gun violence is, frankly, the highest priority we can fight for is keeping our kids safe and making sure they have an opportunity to thrive in our schools and have an opportunity to be prepared for the real world and move on and fight for themselves. The other thing I will say, just from a resume side of things, I spent 5 years in DC government, turned my pain into purpose, fought to pass the first bill on gun violence in 30 years, the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. I was appointed by President Biden as his special assistant on all things gun violence prevention. And when Trump cleared us all out, I had to make a decision. You know, do I lobby and consult, or do I put my head down and try to see if I can continue to serve? And so I'm excited to be here as a candidate for at-large. My focus is safety, education, and home ownership, recognizing that that is one of the key ways to disrupt the cycle of poverty. I got 15 seconds. I'm not used to this. This is good. Sorry, one forum, they gave us 30 seconds. So anyway, with my last 5 seconds, I will say I'm about action. And so if you want less talk and more action, I hope you will vote Greg Jackson. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
Hey, good evening. Again, everyone has said thank you for being here and thank you for hosting this. I'm excited to be here. My name is Daryl Moak, and I am the DC Statehood Green candidate for at-large for this particular season. And so I'm excited to be here and be a part of the conversation. Why? Because it's time for us to not continue to sit and expect the same rhetoric, the same status quo, the same things that have been promised for decades that have not been delivered. It's time for us to put people in office who are going to be people from the people, who are going to not forget where they've come from. We're not going to forget that they are a part of the community and they don't sit in an ivory tower. And so I am here because I want to make sure, as a parent, as a single parent, as a former foster parent, as an adoptive parent, as a mental health professional, as an educator. I've worked as a substitute teacher, as a consultant for school systems outside of this area, and continue to work to improve the quality of life for all of our citizens and residents, regardless of where they are and where they come from. So I'm excited for that. It's time for us to begin to look at achievements and not so much concerned about all the different testing measures that are there without looking at the circumstances and situations that children and youth are coming from. For decisions to be made, need to include everyone at every level. That includes including our students, including our parents, including our system, including community partnerships to impact how we deliver quality education across the board, and making sure that we're funding equitably across the board systems so that students are able to achieve and thrive. It is not just enough for people to graduate if they can't do anything from graduation. We need people to be prepared and students to be prepared to live and thrive and be the next generation of leaders and the next generation of those that will govern and carry our community forward. And so I'm Daryl Moak, and I'm running for your vote, one of your votes at least, as a candidate for the DC City Council at large from the DC Statehood Green Party.
No, let's go with this one. Let's go with this one. Peter, please don't start the timer. Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dwight Davis. Leaving education, leaving DCPS, was one of the most heart-wrenching decisions I've ever had to make. I am a career educator. I've spent over 22 years building my career. Education is what gets me up in the morning. And please, no one tell my wife and kids that education gets me up in the morning. It's absolutely them. But there comes a point where you realize that there's only so much you can do within a system. That if you really want change, you have to ask more of yourself. You have to put yourself out there in ways that you haven't before. So I'm here. I'm bringing everything that I've learned in the classroom, everything that I've learned as a school leader, and I'm bringing it here to you, the people, and hopefully the council. Because the one thing that we need to fundamentally understand is this: our greatest economic engine is our children, the next generation. And if we want a future-ready, a strong DC, we have to entrust it to the people who will build it, our children. And let's be honest, the council could benefit from someone who knows what it means to manage a classroom of 30 students, a school with 50 classrooms, because that translates into managing 30 different departments that have 30 different issues. And that matters because you have someone who has worked side by side with the people, the families, the organizations that work with the schools, because that's how you get things done. Because as you will hear me say, the people closest to the problem are the people closest to the solution. And it is my job to work with you. Thank you.
Just in time for me to turn off my phone. Hi, y'all. My name is Oye. I'm a Ward 8 resident, former ANC commissioner, and a current shadow representative fighting for DC statehood. That's what I do. That's not who I am. I'm a child of immigrant parents who came in the 1970s because they were promised that if they worked hard, they could live with dignity. And they dreamed that if their kids worked hard, they could live with dignity. And in 2026, in DC, that promise has been broken, and that dream has been deferred. Earlier this year, I saw kids going to school by themselves because their parents were afraid to go outside. That's personal to me. Because years ago, I would have been that kid. Those have been my parents at home. And we've seen the DC government do little to nothing about it. We see our current budget cut healthcare, but somehow find $1 billion for a stadium. We see so many cuts that benefit us, but go to the top. We're seeing kids being criminalized for the way they look just because they're outside too late. It doesn't have to be that way. Our values can align with our government again, and I'm running to make sure these promises come true. Now, as a pharmacist, I know what it's like to see someone have to choose between their medication and their bills, or have to talk to a 5-year-old about complex medications because their grandmother doesn't speak English. And I've seen the DC Council disinvest from us all. I've seen a budget that puts schools against schools, parents against parents, administrators against administrators, and it doesn't have to be that way. DC deserves better, and I'm running to fight for the DC you deserve. Thank you for allowing me to be here.
Wonderful. Thank you, candidates. We're now going to start with the questions. I'm going to mix it up a little bit. I'm going to take the questions for the next panel, for this panel, and I'll do the same for the next panel. And instead of choosing who's going to go first, I'm going to ask, would anyone like to go first? All right. Thank you, Oye. All right, terrific. Okay. Here's the question. At DC Bilingual, all students, regardless of immigration status? And what would you say directly to a family who is afraid to take their children to school?
I really appreciate you asking me that because it brings me back to something that happened a year and a half ago. I was volunteering at Columbia Heights Education Campus, and the teacher found out who I was, the representative. So she instructed me and volunteered me to put together an immigration town hall, which we did. Folks from the immigrant space, we brought agencies around, and what we learned is that people need legal assistance. Not just thoughts and prayer tweets, but real lawyers that can help them out. So one thing that the government and the council can do is increase the legal funds from $4 million to $8 million. Because right now, in the Trump administration that's changing their policies every other week, we need legal professionals that can carry people's hand through the process. That's how you keep people safe. We also need to make sure that we fund ESL programs, so parents who speak different languages, who may even speak English, can understand the government programs so they can actually make efficient decisions and bring down the costs that happen reactively, because we do things reactively.
Thank you, Oye. Lisa, I'm going to come to you. DC serves a growing population of multilingual learners, and we're gathered today in a high-demand, multicultural, bilingual school community like DC Bilingual. What is your vision to ensure that multilingual learners not only have access to school, but truly thrive academically and graduate prepared for college and careers? How will you define and measure success for the multilingual learners during your term? I'm sorry? I will. Just, yeah.
Okay. So we're at,
Yeah, we're mixing it up a little bit.
okay. All right. That's fine. Thank you. First of all, we know there is incredible demand for bilingual education. We have wait lists at schools. We have, and particularly in Ward 7 and 8, significant demand for more schools to serve students. I think that it's what people don't often understand is that it's really important to, bilingual education is about acknowledging that it's an asset to speak an additional language. It's not about teaching that one language is more important than the other. It's about building competence in both of those languages. So it could be in your native language, taking a literacy, a complicated literacy course with complex tests, and becoming very a good writer in your native language, as well as learning another language that is not your native language. So I think we have to look at both. We want students to graduate who are literate in 2 languages, because that's a benefit to them in the career, in the workplace, once they are ready for college and careers.
Candace, I'm going to go back to you with the immigration question. Do you want me to repeat it?
Yes, please.
At DC Bilingual and across the district, many families, particularly in immigrant communities, are navigating because they are fearful of immigration enforcement. This is impacting attendance, trust, and student well-being. What concrete steps would you take to ensure that schools remain safe and protected spaces for all its students, regardless of immigration status? And what would you say directly to a family who is afraid of bringing their children to school?
Thank you. Schools should be safe and trusted spaces regardless of our immigration status. And so one of the clear policies that I would do would be to protect that regardless. Having behavioral health supports in our schools, because we know that students that are struggling or students that are immigrant students are ones that really do need the behavioral health support. So bringing back behavioral health supports would be one that I would focus on as well. And also ensuring safe passage to our schools. In the Brightwood community, I support and have really thoroughly enjoyed seeing how the community has come together to do walking bus stops. And with those walking bus stops, you go to a different location, the parents go to meet up with other parents, and then other parents will take their kids to school so that the parents feel safe, the students feel safe, and everyone gets to school feeling safe. So that's another way that we can protect our immigrant students.
Thank you, Candace.
Thank you.
Greg, I'm going to flip back to the multilingual learners question. What would you do during your term to make sure that the measure of success for multilingual learners is defined?
Okay. Thank you. I was really ready for the immigration question. I got a really strong answer, so I hope I get to come back to that.
Too. You'll get to answer that one too, don't worry.
Okay, thank you. You're a great moderator, though. Man, that was good. Well, first of all, I think we have to make sure we're investing resources for folks, regardless of what their native languages are. Just got off a call with 3 principals, and one of the major challenges they shared is that while folks are learning how to help teach people their second language, they aren't actually being given the resources and training to be experts in the content that they're teaching on. And so that is one of the things I would love to prioritize, is how do we make sure our ESL providers or teachers or educators are given a full and really more specialized education to make sure that those same students have the opportunity to be just as strong in reading and math and other topics as those who have a native English language.
Thank you. Daryl, you get the immigration question.
Joy.
You want me to ask it again, or do you? What will you do during your term to make sure that immigrant families feel safe bringing their children to school, given everything that we are facing right now?
Initially, I think the first step is for government to be very clear unequivocally that people are safe and that we're going to keep you safe. That we're going to show up, we're going to put our resources in the places where they need to be in order to make sure that people are safe. First, we have to say it and be about doing it, right? Because right now the government hasn't said much. They're running scared, and we don't need to be. Now, priority-wise, I would say, of course, I'm the DC statehood candidate, so I would say fighting for statehood eliminates some of the fears that we have right now and how we're being impacted as a laboratory experiment for people in Congress. So I think that's one of the first things that we need to begin to address, but also to put concrete things in place to make sure that students and parents can move from place to place and feel safe in doing so. That means making sure that we have whether protections from citizen leaders, protection from nonprofit organizations that do this work, protections from lawyers that do this work, protections and services members that are hired by the district to serve the community. We need to get to those places of service so that people can feel safe with the people around them that are moving them through the system. Thank you.
Thank you. Dwight, on the multilingual learners, what will you do during your term to make sure that multilingual learners are going to be able to measure and be successful, and how do you measure that success?
Right. First, I want to acknowledge the fact that the charter school sector, you all are responsible for the education of adult learners as well as multilingual learners. There are more multilingual learning schools, Washington U. Ying, Mundo Verde, here, right, Sella, right? And because you have the heavier lift of educating multilingual learners, I believe that we need to look at the student formula and ensure that you get your fair share of that money, because DCPS is not educating as many multilingual learners as you are. Number 2, we need to ensure that we have culturally and contextually relevant teaching, teachers and teaching for our immigrant learners, and our multilingual learners. That is critical for students to feel safe, and when students feel safe, they learn. There's brain research that proves this.
Thank you so much. Lisa, now I'm going to give you the opportunity to answer the immigration question. What will you do during your term to make sure that students will feel safe bringing their children to, and that parents feel safe bringing their children to school?
Yes. Well, first we have to assure them you are safe and we have your back. And too many schools were on their own, frankly. And I recognize that we have to be careful. We have to protect our students, and we also have to be cautious about this administration because we don't want to draw attention to schools or to students inadvertently. Still, I know the school where I was chair of the board, I talked to our head of school every week, and we knew exactly which families needed support. We knew what they needed, and we were providing it for them. But there was really no guidance. They were seeking pro bono support, legal advice in some cases, and I think there's really no excuse for that. I understand that we have to be careful with what we say publicly, and the most important thing is to protect our students. But again, there's no excuse for not providing that guidance to all of our charters, all of our LEAs, and making sure that they know how they have best practices so they're not just inventing it as they go along.
Thank you. Candace, now you get the multilingual learner question. I'll repeat it again.
Okay.
DC serves a growing population of multilingual learners, and we're gathered today in a high-demand multicultural bilingual school community like DC Bilingual. What is your vision to ensure that multilingual learners not only have access to school, but truly thrive academically and graduate prepared for college and careers? How will you define and measure success for multilingual learners during your term?
Thank you. Multilingual, learners, in order for us to move the needle, I think, from access to excellence, we do need to focus on our funding supports, but additionally expanding our programs. And sometimes we can do those. I know sometimes I get a little wonky and in the weeds when I start talking about reprogrammings and reallocations. But reprogramming and reallocations for dual language and biliteracy programs, and also multilingual educators, and hiring more multilingual educators for the support. I keep running out of time.
Thank you. Greg, now you get the immigration question. Do you want me to repeat it?
No, just watching the timer.
All right.
All right. First things first, I do not think it's the job of the schools to deal with and try to defend our youth from ICE. I think that is the job of our law enforcement, of our mayor, and most importantly, of your council. And I think the first thing I would do is denounce this reason that ICE is attacking our undocumented immigrants. They are claiming this as a public safety strategy when there's no data or stats that reinforces that someone is undocumented is more likely to cause a crime or harm others. And I actually testified before Congress last year alongside the mayor and the attorney general and Chairman Mendelson and denounced it to their face. And they did not have a strong argument of why this is happening. This is about power, intimidation, and control. It is not about safety or our economy. The other big thing is, as your council member, I aim to build more power with Congress. We cannot address this challenge without having Congress at our side. I'm the only candidate that's been endorsed by members of Congress, and we have to continue to build on that to make sure they're fighting alongside us. And I still have more to go, but the last big thing is we have to end the coordination between MPD and ICE. It is harmful, it is dangerous, and frankly, it is illegal. And so we need to push more legal efforts to fight back. Thank you.
Thank you. You get now the multilingual question, multilingual learners. What will you do during your term to define and measure success for multilingual learners?
I think the operative plan here is to establish the baseline for learning, period, so that everyone is living up to the same standards, regardless of what the challenges may be that lead you to that. Mm-hmm. And then we put in place the measures that are needed to make sure people can achieve, right? So whether you are a multilingual learner or not, there is a standard that you're working towards and you're getting the support that you need to meet it. Right, so that you're not a different standard. It's not softening standards in some area to make other standards better somewhere else. In the world that I come from, I started teaching myself German when I was in junior high school on my own. I got a book, talking to some friends, and I started trying to learn it. I took Spanish in class while I was at school, and I'm really not great at it, but I get excited when I'm in a public space and I can figure out the words. I think that's what's important, is for all of our students to begin to learn how to have conversations with people, to recognize, to understand, to value culture, and to make sure that education supports that by making sure that we can teach it in ways that make it meaningful for everyone and that communication across sectors is possible.
Great. Thank you so much. And then...
I would imagine I get the...
Yes, you do.
Okay, can you repeat it for me?
You got it. Immigration, right?
Yes.
Yes, sir. You want me to repeat it?
Yes, please, if you don't mind.
Okay, of course. At DC Bilingual and across the district, many families, particularly in immigrant communities, are navigating real fear due to immigration enforcement. This is impacting attendance, trust, and student well-being. What concrete steps would you take to ensure that schools remain safe and protected spaces for all students, regardless of their immigration status? And what would you say directly to a family who is afraid to bring their children to school?
Thank you for that. Mm-hmm. I think this is a multi-pronged approach. I think initially, I agree with Greg, we have to ensure that MPD is not coordinating with the federal government and ICE. That's point blank number one. Number two, I think we need to think about safe passage and have special accommodations, especially for schools that have large populations of immigrant students. We have the data. We need to use the data in an effective way. I also think, from a school leader lens, we need to empower our school administrators to have systems and structures in place for if something happens, right? And you know, one of the things as a school leader that I really wanted parents to understand, and I want everyone here to understand, is that when a parent sends a child to a school, that principal sees the child as their child, right? And I think that is so important. You know, you're here because you've made those relationships with families. And when families trust the leaders and the teachers, they feel comfortable. So I think it's relationship building on that piece at the school level.
Terrific, thank you. Oye, the multilingual learner question. What will you do during your term to make sure that multilingual learners are able to be successful, and how will you measure that success?
I'm so glad you asked that question, because my dad came to this country not speaking English very well. And he didn't have a lot of money to get a tutor to catch him up to speed. But people provided the time to help him catch up. Right now, when we talk about resources for our schools, they only talk money, but not a lot of time. We're talking about kids who lost 2 years of school and are now acting out because we didn't replace the time. So what I believe is we need to get more professionals in these classrooms, getting kids to be interested in certain careers. But the other metric that's really important is also literacy. I supported so many returning citizens, and one thing they all have in common, especially for the young offenders, is they're reading at low literacy levels. 70% of people in juvenile detention do not read at a 4th grade level. And if these people are not reading right, they won't be able to get those careers. They won't be able to live productive lives. And that's something that we can actually measure. That's something we can actually support. We can increase funding for the Washington Literacy Centers to go into charter schools and public schools so all of our kids will have a fair shake.
Thank you, Oye. Now we're going to go to a question that everyone is going to answer. Does anyone want to start? All righty, thank you. Terrific. Okay. In Washington, D.C., public education is split, with roughly half of all students attending D.C. public schools and half attending public charter schools. Like D.C. Yet D.C. public schools often receive additional public resources that charters do not, resulting in differences in per-pupil funding and across all services and access to services. Given this context, how would you ensure that our funding system is truly equitable and accounts for students with the highest needs, including multilingual learners, students with disabilities, and students experiencing homelessness? How will you measure whether those investments are improving the outcomes?
What a question to volunteer to go first on. So many parts to it, right? So the answer is actually much simpler than we make it. The school system, we have 2 parts to what ultimately amounts to, for everyday people, a school system. We should act like a school system that has multiple parts to it. And we should make sure that funding is funded equitably across all the parts of that school system. And so money should follow the student. Right? So if with money that's invested, money needs to follow the students, so the schools are staffed and equipped to be able to educate that child wherever that child is located. If schools are working in that fashion and funding is working in that fashion, then we also get professionals that are working in those fashions. We also get community organizations that are working in that way. We build a network and a system that educates everyone equitably. And we make sure that we fund it in a way that makes sure that every student is getting the resource that they need. The school has the resource that they need in order to make sure students are getting the best education possible.
So I'm going to do a follow-up. So
Sure.
Would you fund the student individually, or would you give more funding currently to DC public charter schools?
I think both have to happen. I think there's a pool of money that follows the student to make sure the baseline is set. Mm-hmm. And I think beyond that, then you begin to fund based on the need and what that school's need is meeting. right? So if you're the only charter school in an area and there's a greater need, you're going to get funding that's going to support the need that you're meeting for that educational system in that area, right? And so I think there's a mechanism, an algorithm to figure it all out, but I think the doing of it means we have to have the will to do it, and most of the time council and the mayor's office just don't have the will to do it because they're too busy to doing, I don't know what they're doing, but they're not doing all the things that need to be done to make sure that we're getting what we need in our school system.
Thank you. Okay. Dwight.
Okay, I'm just going to repeat something very quickly, take 10 seconds. Charters are educating all of our adult learners and the bulk of our multi-language learners. There should be more funding going there. Charter schools also have to pay disproportionately more costs for their buildings. So we should make sure that Daniela doesn't have to choose between hiring someone and paying for the rent, because that's not right. So we need to make sure the schools are available. And then we need to use the data, because we know the percentage of homeless students, the percentage of students at risk, and we need to make sure that if certain schools have disproportionately more, we need to provide more. And the last thing I want to say, it has to do with programming. In elementary schools, we have robust programming. In high schools, we have robust programming. But in middle schools, the programming is not as robust. So we need to make sure that the programming follows the students, so that you're not having all this programming, I know I'm done, and then you get to middle school and there's no programming.
Thank you. Oh, yeah.
Our current funding system is broken. It's putting charter schools against public schools. We have a cost per student that doesn't work, because after October, students go from one charter school to a public school, and now the funds are stretched thin. We have to think outside the box. Right now, every council member is going to tell you we don't have enough money to do what we want to do. But we have a lot of developers, a lot of sports teams here that are willing to come in and give us very little. We need to create better CBAs. So when the Washington Commanders have a deal with my neighborhood school, Johnson Middle School, they'll all program with DC Prep. Because in Ward 8, 60% of the kids go to charter schools. And it's really important to think about the equity in this. Ward 4, Ward 5, Ward 7, Ward 8 kids, they go to charter schools. And if we really want equitable outcomes, then we gotta fund like we want equitable outcomes. When we say we want to level the economic playing field, our budget and our values gotta align.
Thank you. Great. Lisa, would you like me to repeat the question? Are you good? Sure. Go ahead. Okay. In Washington, D.C., public education is split, with roughly half of students attending DCPS and half attending public charter schools like DC Bilingual. But DCPS public schools, or DC public schools, often receive additional public resources that charters don't get, resulting in differences in per pupil funding and access to services. Given this context, how would you ensure that our funding system is truly equitable and accounts for students with the highest needs, including multilingual learners, students with disabilities, and students experiencing homelessness? How will you measure whether those investments are actually improving outcomes?
Thank you. I think we have to start by acknowledging that it is unfair that DCPS gets supports that charter schools do not get. They get, in addition to mental health services, they get legal services. There are a lot of costs that I acknowledge go into running a public school system, but we have to acknowledge that charters are bearing the brunt of those costs themselves. I think I want to be different and really lean into facilities. I know there's some people who are advocating in some of the questionnaires we received that charter schools should just be paid for facilities based on what their costs are each year. And I think that's absurd, because we all know, and as former chair of a board, we had to save money every year. We had to spend $100,000 on addressing lead issues. And that was not money that anyone paid for. That was money that we saved over time from our facilities allotment. And schools have to save to purchase buildings. They have to maintain their own buildings. And so saying that they should be only getting paid what they're spending on a given year makes no sense. We have to make sure that we are funding all of our charter schools so that they can serve their students.
Thank you, Lisa. Candace.
All right. Okay. Ready, set, go.
Yes, I strongly support, and I know I've said this before, that our funding should follow our students' needs. I stand by that regardless of the governance of the school, if it's DCPS or if it's, charter schools. I also believe that it should be a weighted model and that we should work with our subject matter experts to get a weighted funding model so that we're ensuring that it is following the needs in a weighted way. Did want to speak really quickly about facilities as well, school modernization. It is important to have your HVAC work and your boiler systems work and all this stuff when you're in your schools. And when I was working with Councilmember Janice Lewis-George, who chairs the Committee on Facilities, I did see that DGS wasn't great, but I do admit that with our charter schools, they need more support, need more funding to ensure that their modernization is straight.
Thank you. Greg.
All right. Well, luckily, fellow candidates have said a lot of what I wanted to say, but I want to acknowledge, charter schools are public schools too. And again, 50% of our youth in this city attend these schools. And when we think about what's needed, frankly, we are failing too many of our youth as it is. Only 33% of our 8th graders can read proficiently. And so this isn't a time to fight over what resources should go where. This is a time to prioritize more resources to support our youth. Just last week, I was at Stokes with Miss Erica Bryant, and I walked past kids that said bonjour and after nap time, but yet we still saw facility challenges and the HVAC wasn't on. And at the end of the day, we have to fight to make sure our children have the resources they need, whether it's facilities, whether it's teachers that need better benefits, or whether it's more resources for our special needs youth. And as far as the money, look, we have one of the largest budgets per capita of any city in the country. And in 2025, we spent $499 million on correctional facilities, $128 million on trails, $246 million just to connect people to information. So I think it's not about do we have the resources, is our youth really a priority? And that's something as a council member I want to fight for.
Thank you. All right, we're going into the last question. Again, who wants to go first who hasn't gone first yet? Or I will call on somebody. Okay. Thanks, Lisa. Okay.
Good job.
Take one for the team.
Right, it shows initiative, right? Too often, the families of our most marginalized students, including immigrant, multilingual, and low-income families, are excluded from decision-making or only consulted after decisions are made. How will you ensure these families are meaningfully included in policymaking from the very beginning? What concrete structures or processes would you put in place to make this consistent and accountable?
Thank you. Well, this is actually easy because I did this a lot, both when I was president of the State Board of Education and also working for the council. At the council, I had responsibility for overseeing all of the education agencies and the entire oversight and budget process. And what I did every year was I relied on advocates, on school communities to tell me what they wanted me to ask or what they wanted me to have the chairman ask. So that because these are the people who are in the schools, who are on the ground, who know what the issues are. And so engaging them early and often, not just waiting until it's time for oversight and budget but inviting, and you all say this now, if I'm council member, you are all invited to my office, but I will also be out talking to you and identifying what those concerns are and literally having you give me suggested questions for oversight. I'll be sitting on that dais next to Chairman Mendelson and asking those hard questions that you want to ask of our leaders. Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, Kim.
Same question.
Same question. Would you like me to repeat it? Sure. Too often, the families of our most marginalized students, including immigrant, multilingual, and low-income families, are excluded from the decision-making or only consulted after decisions are made. How will you ensure these families are meaningfully included from the very start? And what concrete structures or processes would you put in place to make this consistent and accountable?
Thank you, thank you. Our families need to be engaged early, often, consistently. That's clear. I stand by that. And I've seen this success before when we work with programs like Cross Connect. And we do teaming amongst our agencies and coordination. So working with DCPS and DHS and CFSA, and ensuring that we're use a teaming approach to bring in our families and provide our assistance there. It is something that I think needs to be spread across into the education space, and ensuring that the supports are there for amplifying our families' voices. Thank you.
Can I just follow up on that and see if I can get a little bit more detail from you on what you think the best supports would be for those families so that they are included from the very beginning in the most important decisions that are being made for their kids?
Sure. What I think the best supports are is knowing that care is a part of coordination. Mm-hmm. And so when we weave in our coordination, as I gave an example earlier in terms of agency coordination, but even between just DCPS and charter schools and coordinating there. I mean, we had Snowcrete. And, as we went through Snowcrete, I really saw a disconnect there. And it would have been better if we had coordination for schools opening, schools closing, whether there's going to be virtual learning supports. That's the kind of care and coordination that I'm talking about in terms of coordinating our government to support our students, all of them.
Great, thank you. Oh, yeah, I'm going to skip to you. Would you like me to repeat the question? Okay.
Let's be frank. We have a reactive government. They don't value our opinion, and all these community meetings are just advisory and window dressing. In order to improve outcomes, people need to have decision-making power. Let me talk to you about about a hospital in Ward 8 called Cedar Hill. We lost our council member last year for about 8 months, and Mayor Bowser and a bunch of council members came down and cut the ribbon open for Cedar Hill Hospital. This hospital had no community programs, they had no input from us, and within a year, they are failing. We have people going in for minor surgeries, getting different appendices removed. This is a system failure. But at the same time, we still don't have a community board. And because of that, and because Ward 8 residents weren't at the table, we are now on the menu. This happens in healthcare, this happens in schools, and without giving people real decision-making power, not just advisory and performative, we won't be able to have good outcomes. In 10 years, our budget went from $15 billion to 22. That's a 50% increase. But none of our lives got better within that time. We had to be involved in this, and you have to give people decision-making power.
How do you do that? I just want to be a little bit more specific about this. How do you make sure that the parents of these kids are involved from the very beginning?
So if there's a board, there had to be parents from that community. Not just ANC commissioners, not just folks that work from DEMPED, not folks that work for OSSI. Has to be parents, has to be teachers, has to be folks that live in this community. If we can vote for advisory neighborhood commissioners, then we know enough how to change a school. And when it comes to teachers or principals like Dwight and beyond, you guys know what's going on. And if someone like me, if I'm a council member, I may need your help. But we don't empower people. We don't talk to people. We talk at them and not with them. And that lack of collaborative opportunities, in my opinion, don't serve us well.
Thank you. Dwight?
Yes. Can you give me the gist?
Yeah, sure. How will you ensure that families, low-income families, multilingual learners, immigrant families, are involved from the very beginning in the important decisions that are being made about their kids as opposed to being an afterthought?
Yes. Okay, so first and foremost, we need to look at the data, right? So as a council member, we have a responsibility to examine the data. And I'm going to say something that a lot of school leaders understand, and parents, I think you understand this too. You inspect what you expect, right? So if I ask my son to make sure his room is clean, I can't say go clean your room and not look at it. I got to inspect what I expect. And so part of that means that as a council member, I need to have boots on the ground, visiting schools, talking to school leaders, because that's part of the job, oversight, legislation, oversight, and budgeting. And the last thing I will say is that we have to, DC is so unique. We have so many organizations represented in this room. And it is our responsibility, my responsibility, to talk to these organizations, because those organizations like PAVE are closest to the parents. So if I'm not talking to them, I'm not understanding what's happening in the community.
Thank you. Daryl.
I absolutely love this question. Absolutely. I have been saying for decades that what we need to do is ensure that everyone at every level is involved in the decision making. That means parents, that means grandparents or other community leaders are involved. That means students themselves are involved in decision making. We're having conversations, and it isn't just a matter of asking them the questions and then taking the questions to the up on high, right? It is these questions are not questions; they are priorities, and those are the priorities that we act on, not performatively listening to what people have to say, doing some sort of last minute community engagement thing to say we did it because the law said we had to, but nobody knew about it, and no one who lives in that community knew about it. I live in Ward 7, and I can tell you how many times I've actually known that there's been a community forum held by any council person that I know of in the area where I'm going to live that I could get to in enough time to know how to get there, right? So I think, and to hear my priorities. So I think that's the important thing, is having people on the ground and involved in every committee and the work and the decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Greg.
Yeah, look, I'm getting a little emotional. I think it really starts with the people we elect. And are they even connected to the families and the students that are most impacted? I've mentored 26 youth before I even decided to run for office, and 5 of them have been shot and killed. And I'll never forget being at that funeral and seeing 2 teenagers in a casket and a room full of educators, coaches, teachers, community members, but no elected officials. And right now we have a council and frankly an entire leadership that is overlooking and neglecting the communities that are most in need. And so it starts with the makeup of our campaign. Right now I have 3 principals in our campaign, 2 at-risk youth in our campaign, and 2 that are not too at risk, but they are the ones that are advising us right now. And you can look at our TikTok and watch me doing dances to prove it. But as far as concretely, there's 2 things I would love to do. 1, I want to create a youth network for safety, equipped with a fund where the youth can be a part of a participatory budget process to decide what resources are needed to help keep them safe. And second, I want to fight for a parent resource center for every single school in this district. When we defunded librarians as a council, or they defunded it, guess what? Or when schools were about to defund it, I know I'm out of time. When the schools were about to defund it, I'm going to land a plane. Council stepped in and made sure that they funded a librarian for every school. We can do the same thing with parent engagement, and we know that parent engagement is a key part of bringing people to the decision-making process.
Thank you, Greg. We now have some time for audience questions, I think maybe 2. If anyone in the audience has a question, I believe we have mics. Yes. And could you please direct it to a specific candidate?
Thank you, but baby, is this on? My God. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. LaJoy Johnson-Law. I'm the Ward 8 State Board of Education representative. How are you? Before I address the candidates, I need to center something in this room. This question that I'm about to ask is on our students with disabilities, and it was skipped over. So I am going to ask the timer. I understand we're behind time, but this is one of the issues that I keep talking about with students with disabilities. We're supposed to be included in this form, and we're skipped over, which is what happens a lot of times in our school system. So if we can we do 1 minute and 30 seconds for each candidate, please? Dr. LaJoy would be so appreciative, and Julie, and the Special Education Co-op. I am not on the planning committee, but I believe on behalf of all of us, we are so sorry for skipping the question that the Special Education Co-op had carefully curated for us. Can we give Julie a hand, folks? Thank you, Julie. Okay. Hey, y'all. All right. This is the question from the Special Education Co-op. 1 out of 5 students, all right, where your math skills now? Come on, what's 1 out of 5 now? Come on now. In DC public schools receive special education services, representing a significant public investment. How will you ensure that this investment is actually improving outcomes for students with disabilities? What specific metrics will you use, and what will you do if current initiatives are not delivering results? I'm gonna mix it up. Let's start with Candace.
Love you.
Love you too. This question means a lot to me. Is it on? Okay. Sorry. This question means a lot to me because it's coming from you, but also I have an aunt that taught special education. I have an 11-year-old cousin who has Down syndrome, is in special education. It's something that I would fight for regardless, no matter what, where I am. Let me give you where I would focus, LaJoy. Reducing delays and evaluating the IEP implementation, investing in specialized staffing and retention, and exploring legal and advocacy support for families navigating the system. That's what I would do.
All right, thank you, Ms. Candace. Mr. Gerald, we're going to come to you. I'm mixing it up.
So thank you. So, you know, I grew up in Los Angeles, and where I grew up, we also, the special education included the people on the other end of the spectrum, which often not talked about, the folks on the gifted side of the spectrum. And some of those people also ended up having behavioral problems because they were not getting what they needed educationally, right? So if we think about it from that perspective, we need to think about what is it that this student needs? Right? We decide to define somebody as special ed or special needs. We all have special needs. We all have something that we need to get the education that is best for us individually, and we need to make sure that those IEPs are being followed and that families are engaged in them, that we're doing the resources necessary to make sure you get what you need, that we are treating each student as an individual and making sure they're getting what they need collectively.
Thank you, Mr. Darrell. I'm going to go back to this side. Miss Lisa, I think you had a feeling.
Yes.
Come on.
Thank you. So I think, again, first, important to start with outcomes. We know that the vast majority of students with special learning needs can be successful, can reach college and career readiness with the right support. Some of the things that Candace has mentioned, like timely IEPs, having a pipeline of special education teachers, making sure that they're getting the proper support and training. It's also another job that I have also held as Chief of Staff to our previous Attorney General, and had so many continuous lawsuits, hundreds of families each year still feeling that they have to hire attorneys or find pro bono attorneys just to get their kids the services they need. My kid was one, which I'll talk about in my closing. But we should not be there. We have to start with what is happening at those agencies and why is this happening that families feel like they need to hire attorneys for their kids to get what they need.
Thank you. All right. Mr. Gregg, over to you.
All right. First of all, we are depending too much on federal resources, over 150 million for special needs, even though it represents 15 to 25% of our students. So the first thing I think we need to do is develop a strategy to fund these programs and resources independent of who's in the White House. And we're seeing right now how risky that can be to lean directly on that. As far as specifics go, I would focus on, I take a lot of notes today, y'all. This is good. Okay. Focus on IEPs that are not consistently being implemented, the building more capacity for specialized programs, making sure that we are reducing the number of students that we're sending to expensive places away from DC, addressing the huge transportation failures that we're seeing, address the weak transition from student to adulthood, and recognizing that we're doing a good job with early stage programs for pre-K and pre-3K, but we're not thinking about how do we make that same level of investment once they enter the schools. And so those are just 6 areas I would prioritize.
Thank you, thank you. Mr. Oye.
Dr. LaJoy, Dr. Oye.
Dr. Oye, I'm sorry.
Thank you. And I only say that because you talked about 1 of every 5 kids being special needs. I was that kid growing up. And we're here talking about multilingual immigrant families. We also have to address the fact that a lot of immigrant families don't really have the same type of attention to mental health as other people do. So not only treating that young person, but also the family as well, because it led me to being very violent because I was bullied. We have to also make sure that support is accessible. I'm thinking about my friend Elizabeth Mitchell, who had to send her kid to Baltimore to find a program that can cover her child's IEPs. That's policy violence. And when I was talking about time given to a child for development, you have to think about how far Baltimore is from DC and how much time that child is losing in development. So just going back to the basics, competency, valuing people's time and putting the resources that match up with the things that we care about is very important to me.
Thank you, thank you. Mr. Dwight, I didn't forget you.
I know you did.
I'm intrigued
Oh,
because you
okay.
coming from the system. Come on now.
Yes, ma'am. So I want to tell you all about two twins that I had the opportunity to teach. One could read at grade level, the other one could not. And what was fascinating was that one of the young men, he could if you read a text to him, he could understand on such a deep level that my highest readers in the classroom could not, right? So for me, I had to retool. I had to learn the skills to know how to push one twin and push the other twin in a different way. So number one is making sure our teachers have the training that they need so they can actually help the students move out of special education. Number two, I think we need to stop focusing on proficiency so much and focus on growth. Is the student growing more than a year every year? Because if that's the case, over so many years, that child will meet the level that they need to be at. And the last thing I want to say is that we need to look at attendance data, right? Because a lot of times students, STARS, that's the term that Peter uses, students targeted for additional resources. When STARS don't come to school, they don't feel accepted and loved. So we need to look at attendance data and understand that we need to do something different at the school level.
Thank you all so much, and I'll turn it back over to our lovely moderator. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. And just, I did not skip over it. I was going to use it for the other panel, but it is a very critical question, so thank you so much for asking it. I think then, I don't know if we have time for additional audience questions. I think let's do one more. Perfect. Thank you.
One more.
Yes.
Hi.
Hello.
Okay, you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you all for coming out tonight. I am one of those PAVE parents that you've mentioned a couple of times on the panel. So it's a two-part question. One, as far as education is concerned, PAVE's priorities are high-quality instructional materials, professional development for teachers, math and literacy proficiency, and proficiency is important. We can talk about that at another time. How are you going to make sure that parents and their priorities are heard as it relates to education? And I qualify that question with this. Education, there's not an education committee on the council. It is the entire committee. It is the committee of the whole. Yet when we show up to hearings and we testify repeatedly about these priorities, the only person we're really talking to is Mendelson because no one else is there. So once you answer my question, I also want to get a commitment, and I'm going to hold you to it because I spend a lot of time in the Wilson building, that when it comes time to hear from parents about these priorities, that you will be there to hear them.
Great.
Yes.
Got it. Everyone? Yes?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
I'll start.
Yes, go ahead. 30 seconds for this.
I already had the mic. Thanks. So yes, first thing I'm going to say is, if I'm there, I want you there with me, and I will be there. I'm going to answer the last part first, right? We'll be there all the time, every time, and in fact, we want you to be around as often as possible to make sure that I know what's going on and we're bringing those parents in that need to be heard and talked to, right? So that's the one piece, the key. The key is being present. Being present, being involved, being engaging, and being active, not just engaging as in I send an email out, hope y'all come if you come, but actually engaging with you, to make sure that we are hearing from you and involved with you and taking your decisions and your comments as priority.
Thank you. Go ahead, Greg. Greg, you.
Oh, I'm on it. Great. Well, look, I will say that our campaign is already prioritizing parents. And if you look at our campaign committee, we have 4 parents, 3 principals, and 2 students that are on it. And so we're already starting that process, and I think that's important for you to ask that question of every candidate above all races of what are their current relationships. But beyond that, I want to fight for this parent resource center in every school. We have to empower our parents to be more active and to be a bigger voice. I was at Turner Elementary School this morning. I watched parents cry as they drop their kids off. I know they care, but just because they live in Southeast and just because they don't have as many resources as other parts of town, they deserve to be at the table too, and we need folks in the schools to empower them to join your network.
Candace.
You mentioned that the council should have the Committee of Education pulled out of the Committee of the Whole, and I completely agree. That needs to be done. It should have been done years ago. We have to have focus on education, and the council having its own committee of the, on education would be the right way to do it. I also want a youth advisory council, and the parents can participate if they want, but as far as I'm concerned, we need to hear from the youth. I would love to have the youth advisory council that works on policies that are affecting them right up alongside with the council. Thank you. Ran out of time. Passing the mic down.
Thanks, Candace.
Talk to you later.
Thanks. I'm going to start by saying I think it's important to say families and parents are obviously part of that, but we also know some students are not represented by parents but are being taken care of by others. So I think for me, families is really important. And I've done this work. I've engaged families through everything related to education. I also think it's important to engage all advocacy groups who represent parents and also lean on the State Board of Education as well, because they're also engaging families in all of their work. So there should have a closer connection to the council.
Thanks, Lisa. Go ahead, Oye.
So yes, I agree with everything that was said, but I want to add one thing as a pharmacist. You learn not to just treat a symptom, you got to treat everything. So you're talking about education, you also got to talk about housing security. You got to talk about public safety. You got to talk about food and nutrition, because all of those things impact a young person's ability to learn. So I definitely would welcome you. You know, I already know you already, so definitely stay locked in. But more importantly, be able to grab a coalition. You know, I've been endorsed by 17 organizations, not separately, but working together to make the DC that you deserve.
Thank you.
So I want to say I 100% agree with Candace with making sure we listen to the youth. And I'm proud to say that Dietrich Campbell, raise your hand, is my former 5th grade student. He's my deputy campaign manager. And I have ears to the ground. I'm listening. Some of the most valuable training I've ever had was home visiting, when you go knock on doors and meet with parents. I commit to you that I'm going to knock every door and engage every parent, engage every constituent, because that's who I am. That's what I've always been doing.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, audience members. We're now towards the end, or we are at the end. We're going to have each candidate do a 1-minute closing statement. Okay? We're going to start with you, Lisa.
Thank you again, everyone, for being here. These issues are really personal to me, so this is not just what I've dedicated a good part of my career to focusing on. I also have, as I said, a child with special education needs, and frankly, the system failed him, and for so many years, he struggled, and he did not get what he needed. And, you know, my husband and I, providing advocacy and continuous support to him, finally got him to a point where he could feel better about himself and he could succeed. And also shout out to the Jackson Reed staff, because got him through at the very end and enabled him to graduate, and he's now a junior in college. So, but again, some of that pain still lives with him and how he experienced education. And so one of the reasons I'm fighting and why I want to be in this role is because I want to make sure that no other family has to go through that, and no other student. And I will commit to working for all students in every neighborhood in this city as your next council member. Thank you. Vote for me number 1, please.
Right.
Thanks, Lisa. Candace.
Thank you, thank you. Again, I mean it when I say that I am running to ensure that people feel seen, heard, and valued. I also have said it, and the foundations is what I believe will have our city thrive. Focusing on education, healthcare, and housing, ensuring that education is strong, that housing is stable, and that our healthcare is preventative. One thing I also wanted to add, and I say this often, I know some folks are going to giggle, but I'm not old school, I'm not new school, I'm middle school. I want us to come to the middle because I think it makes common sense for us to focus on common ground. You can call me the Kumbaya candidate if you want to, but I really do want us to focus on what we have in common and stop dividing our city. Focusing on common ground. I know that CARE means coordination. My heart beats for equity and execution. I'm asking you to lend me your vote. Please check out our website, CandaceForDC.com, and vote Candace #1 on your ballot. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Candace.
Candace can, DC can, yes we can.
Greg.
Yeah, I know I've been pretty lighthearted today, but I just want to really reinforce that one of the main reasons I decided to run for council is because our system has failed too many of our youth. And for me, that's losing DeMarcos, that's losing Devone, that's losing Karan. And these are kids who I believed in deeply, who came with me to Congress to advocate for policies. Some of them even visited the White House while I was working there and lost their lives because of violence and because we couldn't keep them safe as a society. And so I'm running because I know how precious this is. I'll ask you real quick, think about the most precious item you have and how afraid you would be to hand away your phone or your car keys or your house keys. And I know as I'm running for council, I'm asking for that same level of trust, for me to be someone that's fighting for your most precious asset or relationship. And so I'm excited to run for this seat, but this is something I'm extremely passionate about. I encourage you to look at my website for more information about my resources, my strategies, my policies, but we cannot afford to lose any more of our youth because we're not stepping up as a council. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Daryl.
Again, thanks for everyone for coming out and being a part of this. I sit at a table with some brilliant people and some brilliant minds, and I came to this table to ask you to allow me to be a servant leader for you and with you, so that we together can make the DC that we choose and want to live in, thrive in, and will be very proud of all across the world, to say that we are here, we are DC. These issues that we're talking about, from our education system, with housing, with food insecurity, with all the things that are going on across the district, are affecting all of us. And we have to come together to work together to make change happen. Every student at every level, whatever school system, part of the system in, every family, every person deserves the best possible. And so I'm asking you to see me in November, because I will not be on your primary ballot because I'm the stated Green Party. So in November, rank me #1 along with whomever else you love, so that together we can make the change that you need to see happen. For the people, forchange.com.
Thank you, Daryl. Dwight.
So my mother was an educator. She worked at Sharp Health. I don't know if you all remember Sharp Health, right across the street from Roosevelt. Students with exceptionalities. And she's the reason why I got into education. She said, I'm not sending you money, so you need to come here and work as a substitute teacher. And initially I was afraid. But my mom taught me about compassion and love and the power of education. Like I said, she's the reason why I got into education. And I'm so indebted to my mother and what education has taught me. And it is an invaluable tool that we must protect. And I'm not running because I want to be out and in front. I'm running because I want to make sure that every child in our city receives a world-class education. So I'm asking, if I'm not your #1, let me be #2 or #3, but please vote for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Dwight. Oh, yay.
My mom and dad came to this country in 1970. They were able to be here because of Brown versus Board of Education, Civil Rights Act 1964, some of the things that the people in this room fought, died, and bled for. My whole existence is because of education and the things that you guys fight for. This campaign, this movement, this coalition built off the backs of 17 organizations is to create better outcomes to fulfill that promise that our kids can live with dignity if they work hard. We are not fueled by special interests. We're not fueled by billionaires. We are fueled by your pain, by your fight, by your joy, by your agony, by the hope of a better District of Columbia. So I say, please look at my website, vote4oea.com. It's a pretty good website. I helped build it. But more importantly, please continue to tell your friends about this campaign. We have a lot of great elections up there, but don't forget about this race, because the at-large candidate can actually mobilize, coordinate, organize the city, and move the power of justice forward. Thank you for allowing me to be here.
Thank you, Oye. A big round of applause for our candidates. Thank you all for being here. I don't think my mic is working again, but we're going to have a 5-minute transition period, and then we're going to have the second panel. So again, give yourselves a round of applause too. Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. You guys are great. Thank you, Candice. Thank you. Hello, good evening. Thank you so much for being here. This is the second part of our forum on education with our candidates. So we thank the candidates for being here as well. My name is Maria Cardona, and I am an alum, a DC bilingual alum, mom, and so all of these issues are near and dear to my heart as well, and I know it's one of the most critical issues, the issues around education for DC and clearly for our candidates to address. So thank you, candidates, for being here. Thank you, audience members, for being here. We're going to start out with a 2-minute opening statement from each of the candidates, and then we'll go into answering 4 questions. Each one will answer the same question, and then we'll go into audience questions. I think we'll have time for 3 or 4 audience questions, and then we'll have 1-minute final statements from the candidates as well. So let's start.
Good evening, everyone. It is a pleasure to be among you, and especially a pleasure to be among so many friends. I'm seeing so many people in the audience that I work with, that I get to do work with schools, so thank you first and foremost. I'm Jacques Patterson, Dr. Jacques Patterson. I am running for the at-large position, independency, in the special election. And currently I'm on the State Board of Education. I am the president. I'm on the 2nd year of being president. I'll also give you the data of that I worked at Rocket Ship. I was the founder and regional director there. And then I also worked at KIPP DC as their Chief Community Engagement and Impact Officer. So that's the data, but let me tell you the why. I came to DC in 1995 with a 4-year-old daughter. And like many of the parents that are sitting in here, I had to make a decision about where I was going to place my child. I understand as a parent what that means when you have to put your child in a school. So we found a great school. She matriculated. She eventually graduated from TMA, Thurgood Marshall Academy. And then she went on to college because of Thurgood Marshall, and she went to Spelman. And then she came back and she became an educator. Education is the most important thing in my platform. There are other things that we'll talk about, but it is the #1 thing because I understand what it means for a parent to put their child in school and the opportunities that they present and how important it is right now that we get education right. So, Jacques Patterson, running for the at-large position, looking forward to the questions.
Thank you, John.
Great. Good evening, everyone. I'm very grateful you stayed. That shows something about the character in this room. My name is Alyssa Silverman, and I am asking for your vote in the independent special election for the at-large seat. I've been an independent since 2013, and I've served 2 terms on the council already, so that's why I might be a familiar name to you. Things that I'm most known for, most certainly paid family leave, bringing paid family leave to the District of Columbia, the Domestic Workers Bill of Rights, and other ways in which we have improved the lives of working families in the District of Columbia. That includes education initiatives as well. I funded an innovative approach to adult basic literacy called IENT, Integrated Education and Training. It's at BRIA, right next door, Carlos Rosario, LAYC. And what does it do? It teaches reading to get people into living wage jobs. It's been extremely successful. Here's what I offer you. Experience of getting really hard things done, like paid leave. a track record of leadership on really difficult issues. But I also offer you fresh eyes. I served in Maryland government after I left DC government. So I have experience in dealing on the executive side as well. 3 priorities quickly. Out of school time programs, free. Let's make them free. Let's focus on return on investment for your taxpayer dollars and on outcomes. We're not doing that right now. And let's make schools the center of our kids' lives. We have to get our truancy and absenteeism rate down, and I will work on that very strongly. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, let's go straight into the first question. Students with disabilities represent one of the highest need populations in our schools, yet outcomes remain uneven across the city. What does success for students with disabilities in DC look like to you? This is to you, Jock, to begin with. And how will you measure whether the system is actually delivering on that vision?
Thank you so much for the question. I want to start by acknowledging my colleague on the State Board of Education, Dr. LaJoy Johnson-Law. And this is a subject that's very, very important to us and that we're working on currently as we do the graduation requirements right now and making sure we get that right. And how do we measure that? By making sure that we have the necessary resources for that we can answer IEPs. That's the first thing important, that we have the resources for the teachers and the people that need to be there. So people like Mr. Anderson, who has the STAR program and wants to make sure that we have those resources for them and that they're graduating and have a pathway to careers and to college. We know we have a number of students that can get there, and we have not really given them the support that they need.
Alyssa.
This was a great. This was a great question that was asked in the last forum, and I've given it some thought in the time that we've been here. First of all, as you noted, Maria, this is 1 out of every 5 students. So we have to consider the success of our students with disabilities to be the success of our system, because there's so many students who have special needs. I would say, second of all, we can't make it a major legal battle to get students and parents the services they deserve under the law. That's got to end. And finally, I agree with Jacques. We need to make sure that our students get what they need in order to be successful learners and adults. And again, that goes back to tracking and making sure they get to school. My neighbor, for example, his bus is always late, always late. We need to get our kids to school on time, number 1.
Thank you. I'm going to give you guys 15 more seconds to go into a little bit more specificity about this question. Okay. You talked about wanting to give more resources. How would you go about doing that?
Okay. So I think it was identified about children making sure that they get to school on time. We've had so many people come and testify in front of us, and that is the most important part, because I've actually had students come in front of me at the State Board of Education and talk about how if they're just a few minutes late, that bus will leave them. And so I know we've been working with OSSI to make sure that we have a better tracking system, to make sure that the buses know when they're there and we can track our children to getting to school each and every day. And if we can ensure that our children are getting to school and being there on time, then we can make sure that we also give them the support that they need with their IEPs and having the resources around those.
Thank you. Alyssa.
Thank you, Maria. I'm not an educator, and I don't pretend to be one. I'm a legislator, and that means I'm an appropriator of funds. But what I see in the data is that if 20 to 25% of our students have special needs, we should have the capacity within DCPS and the charter system to educate our students. We shouldn't, I'm from Baltimore, I love Baltimore, we shouldn't be sending kids to Baltimore. They should be educated by us here in our community. So the things I would focus, number 1, are let's increase capacity to meet the needs of our kids who are in our system. Number 2, the transportation issue. We spend so much money on special ed transportation, and as I said, my neighbor's son's bus is always late. Third, again, I don't understand why. I understand why IEPs are such a battle, but it shouldn't be that way for parents. They should get access, and their kids should get access to the services they deserve.
Thank you. At DC Bilingual and across the district, many families, particularly in immigrant communities, are navigating real fear due to immigration enforcement. This is impacting attendance, trust, and student well-being. What concrete steps would you take to ensure that schools remain safe and protected spaces for all students, regardless of their immigration status? And what would you say directly to a family who is afraid to send their children to school right now?
Okay, thank you so much. I want to just first acknowledge that I remember an incident happened right outside this school, right on North Capitol. I saw the video. Daniela, I called you that day, asked you what resources that you needed, because first and foremost, any elected official has to show up and be there and talk to the school leader and say, how can I help you with your assistance? I've been in a number of schools that have a high population of immigrants and English learners. And so we have to make sure that we have the programs in our schools that allow our parents to feel safe to drop them off. I went to another school and they actually walked me through their program of how they alert their parents when there might be ICE in the area. And that was so instrumental to me. We have to make sure, because each school is a little bit different and we have nuances, but working with those school leaders and then making sure as a council member that we're not collaborating with ICE. That is a big thing, and making sure that our police, our law enforcement are here for DC residents, not for the federal government that's trying to terrorize our children.
Thank you. Alyssa.
Great. I agree with Jacques' answer, but I'd add to it. First of all, we have to be clear. MPD should not be cooperating with ICE. I think we need to and I still don't think there's clarity on that. And I think, but there are other public safety officers, the SROs, that are in schools. I think we need to make sure that all of our school resource officers know that as well. The Attorney General put out an excellent memo regarding this issue to school leaders, and I think we need to make sure with our principals, with our teachers, that there's a refresher every few months to make sure that everyone in the school knows every student, regardless of immigration status, has equal rights under the law, and that they have the right to education under the law, and that we need to protect our families under the law.
Thank you. Many families, especially those navigating schools, mental health services, immigrant supports, and public safety systems, experience these systems as fragmented and difficult to access. In the current climate, this lack of coordination can also impact whether families feel safe engaging with schools at all. How would you improve coordination across these sectors to ensure services are aligned around student and family outcomes? And what specific mechanisms would you put in place?
Thank you again for that question. I'm a big proponent of community schools. The reason being is because when I was in the Williams administration, and I served as their MOCers now, but they called them community affair coordinators back in the day, whenever we saw a problem, we put all the resources in that particular, we target those areas. And I think we can do that again with community schools, making sure they're properly resourced and make sure they're tailored for that particular school. So if there are nuances in that particular school, making sure they have the resources that are there for our children and our families. That's how you coordinate all the resources in the right places and making sure they're in the places where they need to be.
Thank you.
As I mentioned before, school needs to be what I would call the center of gravity for our kids. And they need to feel protected and safe in that space and feel like they have trusted adults that they can talk to. Many of our students have some difficult situations at home. Jacques and I actually were at Thurgood Marshall Academy on Friday, and we both spoke with many students. I will tell you the number one issue students brought to my attention was mental health services. They feel that they don't have access to behavioral health services. And well, why is that? Well, because for all the money we're spending, we don't have a social worker in every school. That's ridiculous. As I said, I'm not an educator. I'm just like someone who says we need to have at least one social worker in every school, so there is a trusted adult that our kids can talk to.
Thank you. What is one specific actionable policy you would commit to in your first year to improve outcomes for DC's most marginalized students, including Black and Brown students, multilingual learners, students with disabilities? What would success look like after 1 year, and how would you measure it?
So I'm gonna give you some figures real quick, and I got this from the DC Policy State of DC Schools recently. So our graduation rate is 79%. Our college to career readiness is 16%. That leaves us with 63% that are not ready but actually graduating. Then you add to that the 21% that is actually not even graduating. So that leaves us with 84% that is actually leaving our system not ready for college or not doing anything. So one of my major things that I would do is early on that if by third grade, if your child is not reading on grade level, let's talk about if we need to hold that child back to make sure that we don't pass them along to the next educator who's going to have a problem, like my daughter, of having a class of 30 students that only 20 of them, well, let's say 4 of them are on grade level, the rest of the other 20 or so, the rest of them are not on grade level. Let's make sure that we put a policy in place where if a child needs to be some more time in a certain grade, especially third grade, let's hold them back.
Thank you. Alyssa.
I'm not sure this answers exactly your question, Maria, but what I want to focus on in my first year is our absenteeism rate. I think it drives a lot of our equity issues. So it's not a piece of legislation, and I want to be clear, it's not a punitive approach. As I said, for me, I'm in the Ludlow-Taylor boundary. Ludlow-Taylor is the center of gravity of our community. And I don't have kids in that school. That's what we need for every neighborhood. And I know there are a lot of charter parents here too. Then we need the charter schools to be the center of gravity for their student body. So my focus the first year, and I've said this, I said it to Victor and Jess this morning when they interviewed me, is we got to take on the truancy rate. And I will do that with the chancellor, and we need to do that by having an education committee on the council. I'd love to chair that committee.
Wonderful. So now I think we're going to open it up to audience questions. If anyone has questions, we have a mic up here. Just come on up to the mic, ma'am. Thank you.
So I'm a SPED teacher. I've taught in Florida, Virginia, Prince George's, and DC. I taught in DC before mayoral control, and I taught in DC more recently after 11 years of mayoral control. And what I've learned is that DC had gotten a lot worse in actually teaching our special education teachers under mayoral control. And there are a lot of reasons for that I could go into, but I'm not going to right now. What I'd like to ask is, what is your feeling about mayoral control of education? Do you think it should be really maintained as it is now, or should it be changed? Sure.
Well, is it directional? Yep. Yes. Okay. Well, thank you so much for your service in teaching our kids. My sense is that mayoral control hasn't accomplished what it was supposed to accomplish, which is to have a sort of buck stops here. And clearly, as you said, if you're seeing on the ground that there's things have gotten worse in special education, then the buck hasn't stopped with the mayor and the chancellor. I think that I am concerned about this disruption to the schools if we have another fight over governance. But I take your observation seriously, and I mean, we know it from what we've already talked about, that we can't get our kids to school on time. We don't see the outcomes that we want, even though I know you're working very hard. So I have to say, I would like to make some changes to mayoral control, but I don't want to spend a few years debating governance again when our kids' education is at risk.
I appreciate your question, and it's really kind of where you and I differ, because I do want mayoral control to stay in place, because I've been here long enough and had kids actually in the system and navigating the school systems where I've seen the difference between when we didn't have mayoral control, when we couldn't start school on time, when we couldn't get books, at that time books, to students, and how we did buildings, we had cost overruns and all these things happening, and where we are currently. Now, is it perfect? No policy is perfect. What I will say, to speak to your special education aspect, because my daughter also has, training in special education, is that we need to make sure that every teacher has that type of training and support that. Because what we're seeing is a lot of our teachers have a high population of special needs students with IEPs and no training in how to address some of their issues, because we're trying to keep teachers in our system, but we also need to give them the resource and the professional development to be able to handle the children and population that's in our schools.
Thank you. Do we have any other audience questions? Great.
Hello. My name is Jasmine. I am also DCB's PTA co-president. The question I have is, I heard you mention truancy, and I also understand that safety is a major concern in our city to and from school. What would you do differently to ensure the safety of our students to and from school, and how would you measure that?
So yes, ma'am. Again, I appreciate your question. Just to give you a little background, working at KIPP DC, I was in charge of community engagement. I had to respond to not one, but 2 actual deaths of students that on their way to school or after school, they were literally killed. Okay, so I know, and I've went through that. And before we even had Safe Passage and the violence interrupters, we were working with the DME to create that program through KIPP and meetings around the city. So first and foremost, I want to give you that background. What we need to do is make sure that our Safe Passage individuals are trained, that they're also coordinated with the school system. A lot of times our Safe Passage and people cannot coordinate with their actual people who are in the school. So a lot of information doesn't get passed, and children use it through social media to have fights and things like that. We need to do a better job of coordinating between the different facets that we have with our school leaders so that we can bring that down.
Thank you.
Thanks for your question. I would work with the subject matter experts here, who I think is the school community itself. I think oftentimes, and I think we've heard this in the earlier forum, parents and school leaders are left out of the decision-making process. I think no one knows better who are the groups beefing with other groups than the people in the school, on the ground, the parents, and the kids. Again, I mentioned that we were just at Thurgood Marshall. They had a lot of thoughts about the youth curfew and ways of dealing with some of the groups of students that are, congregating in different places. So I would, again, I'm not the expert here. I think my job is to facilitate and make sure we're hearing all voices. We're making sure we're hearing the voices on the ground of parents and students, and then coordinating with school leaders to make sure kids get to school safely.
Thank you. Before we close out, I am going to ask you one last question from the last panel, which I think is really important, and that is the disparity of resources between DC public schools and DC public charter schools. What would you do, given this context, to ensure that our funding system is truly equitable and accounts for students with the highest needs, including multilingual learners, students with disabilities, and students experiencing homelessness? How will you measure whether those investments are improving outcomes?
Thank you, and I'm glad that you asked this question because I think a lot of times people don't understand where that inequity lies, and a lot of that lies in not using the USPFF, which is our funding model per pupil, and how sometimes they will manipulate that against charter schools in particular, because that's why they have a facility fund. And we were promised, when I say we, any charter school in the sector, a 3.3 increase every single year. And they really rely on that. Whenever a mayor breaks that promise, that school goes without, okay? So let's start there. The other point is that they got a DGS, they got DBH, they got all these other resources that are, we need to make sure that we're funding our charter schools at the same rate. And we do that between having community schools that have those resources where those individuals are part of that community school, whether that's behavioral health, mental health, and they're in their schools, and that's how we measure it. We look at the kids that are Title I, the schools that are most Title I and need that service, to ensure that those schools are identified as community schools and get those resources in those schools.
Thank you. Alyssa.
Thanks, Maria. This question confounds me. I'll be honest. I'm known as a budget hawk and somebody who really paid attention to the numbers on the council. And I will tell you, every year I would go to the council's budget director and say, I don't understand the school's budget. I don't understand it. It doesn't seem to work. It doesn't work for DCPS schools east of the river whose budgets are getting cut, while Lafayette in Ward 4 is not. I don't understand, if we have a per pupil funding formula, why charters are getting less than DCPS. What I will say is I think it has to do with how we count the students and what time of year, and I've been given this explanation a million times. To me, it doesn't matter. Every kid deserves to have the same, I was about to say in the same resources, but I think in our schools with students who are under-resourced, we need to give them more resources. And the at-risk formula isn't doing it. We need to figure out how we get, for $22 billion, which is our city's budget, a better bang for the buck to our schools.
Thank you. Great. Now it's time for closing statements. 1 minute.
I'll be very quick because you guys have been great staying here past 8 o'clock. My name is Alyssa Silverman. I'm asking for your vote in the special election for the independent at-large seat. As I mentioned before, what do I bring to the table? The ability to get hard things done. We have talked about some really hard things today. How to get our kids back in school, how to make sure our budgets are equitable, how to make sure our special needs students and our students with IEPs are getting what they need. Those are the kind of tough things I've taken on. I've taken on tough leadership battles as well. I have experience dealing with difficult, challenging issues. And I would say, why did I come back? Because I think we need to do a lot better for the $22 billion that you all are putting into our city every year. Alyssa Silverman, asking for your vote. My phone number is 202-386-2173. Give me a ring. alyssa.silverman@gmail.com. Send me any of your questions. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you again to everyone that came out tonight. It's so interesting that as I look out, I see so many people that I've already worked with. And as we get ready to face some of the toughest budgets that we've ever experienced in this city in 20-something years, we're estimating a $1.1 billion over 4-year shortfall. That means that the school community, the ecosystem, both traditional and charter, needs a fighter who actually has worked in schools, who have actually visited schools, and talked to parents and answered their phone calls. I actually see people in here who have called me about their children, and I've actually met them and worked with them. That's the type of person you need on the council at this particular time. I look forward to that because you know why? It's personal to me. I have children in the school system on both sides. I have children that attend in public schools and a daughter that is a charter school teacher. So I know exactly what they're facing every single day, and I talk to them every single day. So I'm Jacques Patterson. I'm running because you need a person who is is in the community, grounded, and knows what we need. Jacques Patterson for the at-large position. You can reach me at jacque4dc.com. I look for, yes. So, look forward to working with you and being your next council member.
Thank you so much. Round of applause for our candidates.
And thank you, Maria. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight.
Yes, so thank you. Before you go, I just want to give a nice big round of applause to every single candidate that spoke with us today. They spent a lot of their time with us this evening. Thank you so much. I want to give a huge olé to our moderator, Maria Cardona, for spending all of this time being an amazing moderator for us. And then I just want to ask everyone in the audience to keep advocating for the issues we care the most about. We are advocating for the kids that are not yet old enough to vote and defend themselves and stand up for the issues they care the most about. And we need them to have the services that they deserve. All of our kids need to thrive and need to be in well-rounded communities that provide them with every single service that they need to become successful adults. And it's our responsibility to make it happen for them. So please vote, please get your neighbors to vote, and please keep advocating, not only now, but after the election also. Testify, advocate, protest, stand up for what you believe in, because our kids depend on it. Thank you so much.